You know, that first hour with a new patient, it can feel like a real race against the clock. So today, we're going to break down how you can transform that sometimes chaotic initial psychiatric interview into a structured, really powerful tool that gets you to an accurate diagnosis and builds a strong therapeutic alliance right from the start.
So here's our roadmap for totally mastering that hour. First up, we'll get into the modern challenges that make this interview tougher than ever. Then, we're going to walk through this awesome time-based framework, how to set the frame, really hear the patient's story, do that diagnostic deep dive, and then wrap it all up by forging an alliance and a solid plan.
All right, let's start with a problem that I think every single clinician is grappling with these days. Why that first hour has never felt more complicated. So what is it really? What is it about today's world that makes this initial meeting so tricky to navigate in a way that's actually effective?
This right here, this captures a totally new reality. You know, patients come in, and they often ask for a specific evaluation. They've been on social media, they've done their own research, and the real danger here is that we can fall into this trap of a checklist-style interview for that one condition, which, risks creating this self-fulfilling prophecy, basically confirming a diagnosis, whether it's the right one or not.
So how do we fight back against this pressure and this complexity? Well, the answer is structure. It's that simple. By breaking up the interview into these clear, purposeful chunks, each with its own goal and its own time limit, we can take back control and make sure we're doing a really thorough evaluation.
And this chart, this is your guide for the entire hour. We're going to spend about 5% of our time just setting the frame, 20% for the patient's narrative, a big 50% chunk for that diagnostic deep dive, and then a super crucial 25% to build that alliance and come up with a plan together.
Okay, let's dive into that first 5%. These opening minutes, they are so brief, but believe me, they are absolutely foundational for everything else that's about to happen.
You have to treat your opening spiel like it's real work, not just, some warm-up. Be super explicit. State your role. Am I your therapist, or am I the prescriber? Explain that today is a medical interview for a diagnosis, and you've got to manage expectations. I tell them, hey, I will be interrupting you. There's just a lot to cover. And maybe most importantly, give them permission to hit the pause button if a topic feels too overwhelming.
And as you're doing all this, you're also calibrating your whole demeanor. The goal is not to become the patient's new best friend. It's all about striking this perfect balance of being professionally warm and concerned. This physicianly warmth is just so critical because it sets up a safe, professional boundary, which is really the bedrock of therapeutic trust.
All right, with the frame all set, we can now dedicate the next 20% of our time to what is honestly probably the most important part of the entire intake, getting the patient's story, but in their own words.
You can see two totally different paths here. Our goal is not to have the patient just fill out some verbal checklist. So instead of using clinical jargon, like asking if they have anhedonia, which, means a loss of pleasure in things they used to like, we should be asking, tell me about that. What's it actually like for you? We are after their lived experience, not just a simple yes or no.
These are your absolute best tools for the job. Questions like, why now? And tell me about that. They are such powerful, open-ended prompts. They really invite the patient to just spin out their story freely, which gives you this rich, unfiltered picture of their world before you start trying to cram it into diagnostic boxes.
And while you're listening, you're mentally building this life course perspective. It's kind of like you're drawing a graph of the patient's life in your head, mapping out all the ups and downs and their functioning and their mood over time. This long-term view is just infinitely more valuable than a static, single snapshot of their symptoms today.
Okay, so you've heard the initial story. Now you've arrived at a really critical decision point. This is what we call the bifurcation point, and it's going to guide the next and largest chunk of your time, that diagnostic deep dive.
This is the one question you have to ask yourself right now. Based on the story they just told you, are you already starting to form a pretty strong hypothesis, or are you feeling kind of confused, maybe a little unsure of what's really going on?
So this bifurcation point gives you two very different paths. If the diagnosis seems pretty clear, that's path A, now's the time to start using those structured, criteria-based questions to either confirm or, disconfirm what you're thinking. But, and this is a big but, if you're confused, that's path B, and you have to resist that urge. Diving into specific criteria when you're already lost can just lead you way down the wrong path. Instead, you just broaden your scope. You gather more general data, explore their life history, their school, their work, their relationships, anything to help you find the real signal.
You have to remember this. If a patient's story is all over the place, if it's confusing, or if you just can't get a straight answer, that is the answer. The way a person tells their story is just as important as the story itself. This lack of a clear narrative is powerful diagnostic information. It could be pointing to underlying thought disorganization, trauma-related fragmentation, or maybe just a real difficulty with self-reflection.
All right, we are now entering the final and super critical 25% of the hour. We've gathered the data, and now it's time to put it all together, share what we're thinking, and create a real partnership with the patient for the road ahead.
Listen, even if you are running out of time, do not skip this part. This is where you show your work. Share your initial impressions, but use plain language, not a bunch of clinical jargon. Discuss a plan together, collaboratively. And most importantly, you have to invite them to disagree. Just asking, how do you feel about this, is so key to making them an active partner in all of this.
And this is just absolutely vital. You have to remember this. Honesty is what builds trust. It is so much better to just admit you're not sure yet and schedule another appointment to keep digging than it is to rush to some premature and maybe totally incorrect conclusion.
Ultimately, this whole structured framework, it isn't just about being efficient or methodical. It's a clinical tool, and it's designed to get us to diagnostic accuracy. Because at the end of the day, an accurate diagnosis is what gives our patients the absolute best hope of getting the right treatment and truly getting better.